She walked them through the evidence, the fingerprint, the confession, the history of animal cruelty. Each fact, another brick in the wall of guilt she was building around him. Through it all, Brandon watched her with a look of detached amusement, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk on his face. The first day of testimony was a brutal and emotionally draining experience for everyone in the courtroom. The first responders described the horror of the crime scene, their voices cracking with an emotion they had been trained to suppress. Michael Thompson's mother took the stand, her body frail and trembling as she spoke of her kind and gentle son. Her testimony, a gut-wrenching portrait of a parent's unending grief. Jurors wept openly, and even the stoic judge, Samuel Crawford, seemed to be struggling to maintain his composure. But it was on the second day of the trial that Brandon Mitchell chose to reveal the true depth of his depravity. He arrived in court wearing a simple, nondescript blue button-down shirt, an item of clothing so ordinary that it initially went unnoticed. But as Michael Thompson's father, James, took the stand to testify, he suddenly stopped mid-sentence, his face paling, his eyes fixed on the defendant. A gasp of pure horror rippled through the courtroom as everyone followed his gaze and realized the sickening truth. The blue shirt that Brandon was wearing belonged to Michael. It was a shirt James Thompson had bought for his son's 24th birthday, a shirt Michael had been wearing in the last photograph ever taken of him. Brandon had somehow smuggled it out of the evidence locker or had taken it from the crime scene, a sickening trophy that he had saved for this very moment. It was a silent, unspeakable taunt, a gesture of contempt so profound and so cool it left the entire courtroom breathless with shock. The chaos that erupted was immediate and absolute. James Thompson let out a cry of pure animalistic rage and tried to lunge at the defendant's table, held back by two bailiffs. The jury stared at Brandon in open-mouthed horror, their faces masks of revulsion and disbelief. Jennifer Morris, for the first time in her career, was speechless, her mind struggling to process the level of calculated evil she was witnessing. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated monstrosity, a glimpse into a soul that was not just broken, but entirely absent. Judge Crawford, his face a thunderous mask of fury, slammed his gavel down, his voice booming through the courtroom as he ordered the jury to be removed. He then turned his wrath on Brandon's defense attorneys, demanding to know how such a thing could have happened, his words dripping with a contempt that was usually reserved for the criminals he sentenced. The attorneys, caught completely off guard, could only stammer that they had no knowledge of where the shirt had come from, their own faces edged with a mixture of shock and professional horror. The incident was a catastrophic and unrecoverable blow to the defense. Any slim hope they had of painting Brandon as a troubled and remorseful child was obliterated in that single monstrous gesture. He had not just admitted his guilt, he had reveled in it, using the victim's own clothing as a weapon to torture his grieving family in a public forum. It was an act of psychological warfare so sadistic it was almost impossible to comprehend. When the trial resumed, the atmosphere was forever changed. The jury no longer saw a 12-year-old boy at the defendant's table. They saw a monster. His age, which had once been the most shocking aspect of the case, was now irrelevant. He had shown them the blackness of his heart, and it was a sight they would never forget. He had wanted to show them that he was still in control, that he was the master of this theater of cruelty. But in his arrogance, he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had not intimidated them. He had solidified their resolve. He had not shown them his power. He had shown them his weakness, the pathetic and desperate need of a narcissist to be the center of attention. The trial would continue, but the verdict was already written on the horrified faces of the 12 men and women who now understood that they were not just judging a crime, but looking into the face of pure, unadulterated evil.